The United States is missing a political party. We have the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and a bunch of tiny third parties, but none of these parties is catching a key political demographic. There is a gigantic hole in the political landscape of America. Maybe this gigantic gap is why turnout in elections is so low compared to other countries. Maybe this missing party is why socialists win people with more money and moderates win people with less money. Maybe this missing third party is why Joe Rogan can insist,
I think if you looked at all my positions, I would think way more of them were left-wing than right-wing.
but endorse Donald Trump. And maybe if the Democrats or the Republicans went after where this missing third party should be, there would once again be landslide victories in this country. So what is this party? Well, this is what, why, how, and that's what the video's about. If you like this sort of thing, don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, I'd like to establish the fact that I am not endorsing what I'm about to describe. Before I explain where this third secret party could grow, I want to point out something important. There is no such thing as a moderate middle in American politics. The belief systems of regular people cannot easily be classified into the three categories of liberal, moderate, and conservative, even if those are the categories forced down people's throats. Instead, regular people just have an eclectic collection of sometimes contradictory beliefs. Even politicians these days don't really fit in those buckets either. People like Bernie Sanders and Zohran Mamdani are just not liberals. They're socialists, they're progressive. Donald Trump isn't really a conservative if you think about it. He's not really conserving much, is he? These are flawed labels. But let's take a look at this 538 article from way back in 2019. People who don't associate with either the Democratic or the Republican parties can be found all over the political axis. But it's worth pointing out how few people were pro-immigration and pro-market, which is probably a fair place to put the Libertarian Party. Instead, many more independents could be found in the pro-egalitarian, anti-immigration quarter. None of the two major parties are covering that ground, and there's no third party that really covers it either. Now, 538's source is the Voter Study Group. Back in 2017, they published this article, which has this graphic that you might have seen before. While it shows the two poles of American politics, the liberals at the heart of the Democratic Party and the conservatives at the heart of the Republican Party, there are also plenty of people in the space beyond those party cores, especially in the economically interventionist and the socially conservative quarter of the graph. Now, at this point, I think you can tell where I'm going with this. Forget about the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. The untapped potential of the American electorate lays with the unfounded Populist Party. This populist party with a new angle on American politics could champion the most popular political causes without prior restrictions or rigid ideological commitments. Their primary commitment would instead be to the American people, to reforming the corrupt political system, to moving beyond the duopoly that has dominated American politics for decades. Economically, the Populist Party would follow in the footsteps of Teddy Roosevelt and the progressives of a century ago. They'd want to crack down on corporate monopolies. They'd want to raise the minimum wage and help those lost in debt. The Populist Party would propose more free meals to poor students. It would require financial literacy classes in high school to set people up for success. It would expand Medicare, cap drug costs, and supercharge assistance programs for people with mental illness. It would cut taxes on small businesses and gasoline sales, but hike taxes on the super rich. Now, the Populist Party wouldn't just stick to policy proposals the left supports. It would also embrace conservative ideas the majority of Americans support, like cutting foreign aid, increasing federal funding for border security, and helping local police departments more. The Populist Party platform would reform the criminal justice system by increasing the penalties for violent crimes. But on the other hand, it would also release those locked up for non-violent marijuana-related offenses. When it comes to elections, the Populist Party would crack down on corporate spending and make Election Day a national holiday, but it would also request all voters present a valid ID. It would pass laws imposing term limits on Congress and the Supreme Court. It would require judges and congressmen to meet ethical standards, and it would crack down on lobbying. Now again, I'm not personally endorsing these ideas, but it is a fact that all these proposals are popular among both Democrats and Republicans, and they align right with that sector of the graph we looked at that is not properly covered by either of those two major political parties. These ideas just never get through Congress because the politicians in charge don't support them. The two major parties, even though they are Big Tent, have whipped their caucuses to discourage bipartisanship. This presents a huge vacuum in American politics. The populists would probably be strongest in areas in the Midwest, like Iowa, Missouri, Michigan, and Ohio. Those are places that swung for Trump in 2016 when the Democrats didn't embrace a populist platform. Realistically speaking, this party would probably remain a small third party for a while, like the Libertarians or the Greens, but it seems to me that the Democrats and the Republicans will probably stick with the same liberal or conservative ideas as usual. For example, the Republicans might just shed the populist ideas of Trump and stick with the pro-corporate parts that the party elites support. Same with the Democrats. They might never embrace the sort of populist, progressive policies Bernie Sanders supports, and instead stick with the liberal status quo stuff. This gives an opportunity for the populists to become a major factor in American politics in the next 20 years. Now, even then, the Democrats or the Republicans might just absorb them, like they did with the progressive movement in the early 1900s. But if they don't, the populists might become strong enough to break the status quo in American politics. But what do you think? Would you support this new populist party? Comment below to let me know. And if you like this sort of thing, why not support me on patreon.com/whatwhyhow. You'll get early access to future videos and your name in the credits. Thanks and adios.